don't be a squirrel and try 1,000 things. Pick one thing, try it for like 6 months. If it doesn't work, go to the next thing. Just keep trying something until you feel like this is where I'm meant to stick.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? The guests on this episode of the podcast are absolutely great. There are a couple awesome investors up in New Hampshire with a very inspiring story so far. They give a ton of advice about a bunch of different topics, from managing a project to reno, finding and utilizing the right resources and people to succeed in the investing space, trying out different things and seeing which ones you love, and so much more. Andrew and Natalie shared so much value today, and I hope you enjoy the show. But before we jump in, would you guys mind please leaving a rating and a review down below? I always love hearing your thoughts on how I can make the podcast better. It does really mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. Let's jump right into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 98 of the Creating Wealth Podcast. Today, we get the great pleasure of chatting with Andrew Bosco and Natalie Barnett, an awesome couple of investors with a two-family in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm very excited to chat with them today and hear their story. What is going on, guys? I'm super excited to have you on here today and dig into your story.
Thanks, Kyle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're super excited to share.
Awesome. So to kind of jump right into things, let's kind of get into your guys' story. Like, how'd you get into real estate? Like, tell us your superhero backstory, if you will.
Why don't you start?
Yeah, no problem. So I guess to preface, Andrew and I met at Keene State, really going back. And obviously we hit it off. We've traveled the world together, everything like that. Big decision when we decided to finally come home from being international was we wanted to make smart investments for our future together. So I'm really unfortunate where my family has been in the real estate and development background since my grandparents, my uncles, my parents themselves. So I've known a lot about some of the things that we talked about from the beginning. Again, I'm fortunate where I'm the younger sibling of two older brothers. Mm-hmm. So my brother before me actually decided for his first home with his wife is to get a two-family. So I really liked the idea, kind of brought it up with Andrew, and then we looked at each other and we're like, I think this is the right decision to kind of go into for our first home. I don't know if you're going to touch on that.
Yeah, no, I to kind of like touch on that and echo what Natalie is saying is, my parents' background, my dad is like the tradesman of all tradesmen. He's literally a master electrician he's a master plumber and a journeyman electrician. And he worked on Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I think he's worked on he came up to 36 of the 1800s homes. He's like a pretty big framer, works a lot of woodworking. And, his background too is he built, our family is actually two-family beach house in Seabrook, New Hampshire. And like right on the water, we have an extra lot. It's a great piece of land, but he built that with my grandfather, like back in the 60s, 70s. And so he's always tried to kind of expose me to like that level of kind of building and, creating your own craft. And there's, I used to laugh because he used to always say, there's a right and a wrong way to do everything. It's up to you to make the decision how you want to do it. So it was kind of like the whole push into the, especially with Nat and I talk about getting the multifamily. It's like, okay, like if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And let's get it done right. So we don't have to think or worry about different problems. So we've definitely been exposed, I think, for a good majority of our lives. So we're really fortunate in that regard.
That's beautiful. That's kind of the perfect combination, like the real estate meets the trades, and it's like just make it happen. And that's incredible.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's good. And honestly, like Nat's father too is a great contractor. Mom's a great real estate agent. My dad is really savvy contracting wise. My mom was an agent a few years ago. So it's nice. We've had definitely exposure to a lot of the aspects of real estate.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Wow.
Yeah.
So did the both of you guys kind of like grow up in New Hampshire or just kind of pick New Hampshire?
So I'm actually from Connecticut. So I definitely have more background in that kind of area, but Andrew grew up in New Hampshire, in Rochester. And like I said, we both met at Keene. So I came up here for college, fell in love with New Hampshire you guys have mountains here, where obviously Connecticut is just a hill. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And I mean, in all honesty, like for our two family too, and buying here, I would say like I was a big pusher of that, because my mindset for the state of New Hampshire was, hey, listen, there's no income tax. Yeah, there's property taxes that are higher, but you can work in a commercial area to keep your taxes low. The reality is that I don't think the market is going to ever be like that bad here, because it's really a commuter state. And everyone talks about the triangle of New Hampshire. You live in New Hampshire, you make Boston money, and you buy a lake house in Maine. That's just like that's the triage
like
everybody
that.
tries to do, and that's kind of like that's kind of like what happens, right? So, and that's something that I was like, okay, Manchester's just south enough. It's far enough away from like where my family is, and that's a little bit of separation like that we all kind of pretty much need. And it's also, an hour's drive to Boston, 30, 45 minutes to the mountains, the lakes. And it's just geolocation, like a great area to live in.
That's cool. I've never heard that before. Like the triangle thing. That's pretty
Oh,
awesome.
it's such a thing, dude.
I don't
It's,
know who you heard that from, but
no, it's all like,
Honestly, I live by it now.
Honestly, like a large like my family's friends, like growing up too, they always did that. They all worked in Boston, they all lived in Manchester, in like New Hampshire, and then all their lake houses were somewhere like near Sebago or something, because they were like, oh, the taxes don't crush you as much as they do in New Hampshire, was always the big thing. So
Yeah, no, Natalie, I definitely feel you on kind of, liking New Hampshire and everything, and kind of falling in love with it. Because we're just talking about it a little bit before the call, but so there was like a 3-day event with, one of the groups that Andrew and I are in this weekend. And one of the properties, or I should say 2 of the properties that we went to on Friday for like a tour, one of them was a 4-family in Manchester, and the other one was a 2-family in Chester. And this was like the first time that I've ever, or the second time I've ever been to Manchester, and the first time I've ever been to Chester. And I was telling some of the guys I work with today, I'm like, dude, this like Chester town is wicked cool. I'm like, it was gorgeous. I'm like, I don't know anything about New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
Outside of like the Rockingham Mall, and like that's it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was nuts, like just kind of seeing like, all the leaf, like the colors of the leaves were like all changing, and like it was gorgeous. And even like the scarecrows, that like every house has like a different theme that people do. I'm like, the sense of community is nuts. I'm like, I've never really seen something like this before. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty interesting to think, like, if you look back the history of like the towns in New Hampshire too, like Bedford was not what Bedford is now. Bedford was a farm town. And so it's kind of interesting, like Chester too. I think of Chester as a farm town, is like what I consider it as, and it's just their access point is Manchester.
Yeah, it's just it was really cool. So I definitely feel you on that one. So when it came to like when you guys first got pre-approved, right? Like, I guess what was kind of going through your head in terms of like markets, or like the cities, towns that you wanted to try and kind of look in? Like, did you want to kind of keep it like relatively close? What was kind of?
I'd say and again, I'm very fortunate that my mom is a practicing real estate agent, and she's very, very good at her job in Connecticut. So, she was dealing with basically the whole hustle bustle of the buying market. Like everyone wanted to buy, everyone wanted to sell.
October to really when we bought in February.
Oh yeah. So she looked at me, and everyone, I have to say, the biggest thing out of everything was everyone was like, don't do it. Don't buy. You're going to mess this up. Don't do that. So my mom looks at me and she's like, you should start buying right now. Right now is the time to buy. She goes, you may not, quote unquote, pay a little more. She goes, but you're really not going to. Honestly, the interest rates are so good right now. You're better off trying to go for a house than not trying at all.
What was her phrase? Money's cheap.
Yeah.
She's like, money's cheap right now, 2 to 3% interest rates.
She goes, do it. But with the pre-approval process, again, I feel very lucky. Like one of our good family friends is a mortgage she's
a lender.
Thank you. Mortgage lender. So again, just fortunate that we knew people who we trusted in the industry that were going to get us the right stuff and the right rates and kind of get us where we need to be. I don't know if you want to touch.
No, I mean, the other thing, because Kyle was focusing like on the areas too, right?
Right.
I mean, we were our two states that we were looking at we were just so anti-Massachusetts. Sorry, Kyle.
Sorry.
We just like, I was like, I
feel you,
don't want to do
man.
the driving. I just everything with Massachusetts. Like my friends live in Salem, and I'm just like, oh my god, I would die.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I would die if I lived here. It's 30 minutes to the highway. No, no. Going back to what you were saying,
Yeah.
which is like in which the area, right? So we were looking at Manchester, Southern New Hampshire, like Bedford, Derry, Manchester, Nashville. We were looking at all the areas. And this is just being told to Canada, I was pushing for like, those areas are good. We should also look at like Dover, Somersworth. Those are good spots. The problem is that they were 10 minutes from my parents. And that was something that, that's part of being in a relationship where you like kind of have to leverage back and forth and be like, you know what? And for Nat, and I totally get it. She's like, no, it's too far. It's too close to your parents. And my parents are wonderful people, but I think you definitely need that separation. So we kind of just said, hey, you know what? Let's find a happy medium. I bet we'll find something. Let's open our broad of scope. And the key, I think, for you and I was it's got to be we were really looking for like a city at this point, because we were like, it's going to have a better rental market in the future. And we have quote unquote more to do. Like now, like we're like 10 minutes from pickleball, which is like what we're addicted to.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes from the store, like to go grocery shopping, whatever it is. So I think those areas, that was kind of like our big scope. I definitely think we were too narrow in the beginning.
Yeah, no, we definitely were very narrow in the beginning. I mean, I definitely had a idea in my head of what I'm considering that we were first time home buyers.
Yeah.
Trying to do this, were we competitive? Not even close. So we had to expand. And
we were FHA. So
yeah. And I think honestly, Manchester held everything that we were looking for, especially since we both hold jobs in Massachusetts, that it was a great commute, really easy commute, really great commute to the mountains, where we were able to hike and everything like that too. But like Andrew said, the biggest part about it was that we were able to see the market in Manchester and know that we're always able to rent.
But I would definitely say the areas in Manchester of looking at where our friends were like, where should we buy? And they basically like showed like, these are the good neighborhoods.
They circled.
They're like, this whole center part, don't go here, go to the other places. And I was like, okay.
That's awesome. So I do really like, how you guys used FHA to kind of get into that, as with, as low down as possible and everything, and kind of jump into that journey. Tell me a little bit about the house, like before, it was kind of stabilized. Like, did it come with tenants? As much as you want to share, I'm not sure.
No, we're completely open books when it comes to it. I think showing the experience is better than anything. Go on.
To be honest, I would actually touch on the house we were going to get that we backed out on. That's probably a good story for this, at least.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Did you freeze, Kyle?
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
You're just totally frozen on our screen.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of frozen on mine too. We could just keep rolling with it.
Okay,
as long as you can hear me,
worries.
that's fine.
No worries. Yeah. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because the house that we're in now was one that I will tell you flat out, I wrote off immediately. I was like, no, we're not doing that house. I was like, that's not going to happen. We were going to do this other house. I remember what street it was still on too. It was on Dick Street, and it was like DIX Street, and we were so close. And the part we were right at the papers, and my dad actually came to look at the house, and he looked at like the plumbing, and he just looked at us and he was like, I wouldn't do it. And I was like, what's wrong? And he goes, it was because we were there, and he touched a pipe, the sewage pipe, and it burst. He literally touched it in the basement, and it blew right open. And so a plumber came in, and they just strapped in it. They didn't replace the whole pipe. They just did a patch job. And my dad looked at me and he goes, they made it look really nice, but he goes, this thing has some bone issues. He's like, look at the wood here. And so we were like, okay, whatever. We were ignorant, I think, at that time. And we just want to get a house. Long story short, the house underappraised, right?
Yeah, like a lot.
It underappraised by like 30 to 40 grand.
Like 50 grand.
Wow.
50 grand underappraised, which in this market, you did not expect.
Yeah, so none of us expected that. So then they wanted the fuller amount that we had. It just didn't work out. So then we basically said, nope, we're not going to do this. Fast forward, we had no house, no call. And then our real estate agent called us and she said, do you remember that house on Amherst Street in Beacon? And we were like, yeah. Well, the first buyer fell through because their financing didn't hold up. They lost their job.
Which is terrible. It's bad news.
Which is terrible for
bad
them.
News
bad
for
news
them.
for them.
Great
and
news.
this is a woman that the seller wasn't using a real estate agent. She was doing it herself.
Yeah.
And she said, you were the next highest offer. We want to consider you for the offer. So we went through all the paperwork and did everything. And that's kind of how we landed our house. And it was kind of interesting because the only reason that we ended up getting this house is because somebody, unfortunately, somebody lost the chance to have financing and we gained it, which worked out in our favor.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. You know, and that's definitely
And we were
something.
cleaning. They
Oh.
called us that day.
Oh, sorry.
No,
you're
no,
good,
no,
you're good.
you're good. No, and that was just, it was quick. It was
Yeah.
turnaround.
But I'd say we should probably describe what the house looks like now.
Right.
Which is, go ahead, you can start.
There we go.
Oh,
We can
Kyle,
keep going.
did you-
I'm just trying to mess with the camera a little bit.
Oh,
get it
okay,
to-
If you want, do you want to take a break real quick, Kyle?
No, that's okay. Honestly,
Okay.
I mean, it's as long as you guys can hear me, that's all that matters. I'm just trying to get the
you're good.
camera to work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, for physically how the house looked, I think that's probably where Andrew and I, as much as we've both had experiences working on houses with our fathers and with our parents for so many years.
Yep.
I never realized how immature or, unsure I was about something until we walked into our home. Firstly, we had plaster walls. Our house is 1890s home.
No, they think it's earlier than that. They just said 18 something. It could be 1850s or 1880s or 1890s. They don't. There's no clear date.
Right.
Let's go with that.
But I mean, we did get an inspection, which was very rare in the first place, but the woman was really great about it. So she let us do an inspection. First thing we noticed was half of the stuff was out of code. We brought it up. We asked about it.
She said the electrical panel was 100 amps. It wasn't. Our electrician
60.
tested it. It was 60 amps for both units. That was the problem. We actually skipped over it in the first inspection. There's a well in the basement that was never filled in, so there's just a giant open hole in our basement,
Yeah.
basically. Like the ring would come out of there, like from the movie back in the day.
Straight up.
Yeah, the plaster walls are fine. The drop ceilings were kind of dead indicators to us. We looked at them and we both made the remark, and I said, I bet somebody put this in here to cover a failing ceiling.
Mhm.
And that's what happened. In both the bathroom and one of the other rooms.
Yeah.
The floors we have really nice hardwood floors.
Original, beautiful hardwood
yeah.
floors. Just really beat up though.
Just beat up, never taken care of. So there's that. And then I'd say
Kitchen was completely done.
The kitchen didn't come with a refrigerator. That was a big thing. And there was no water hookups for washer dryer
in either unit.
and and anywhere in the house. So, and then the newest thing in the house was the HVAC. They put in a brand new HVAC system for the house, because I guess they were complaining about that. But then I'd say old windows, old doors, all those aspects. So this was definitely we were told by Nat's mother, and she cracks me up. She goes, she made the remark like, your generation wants like more turnkey. They don't want to do the work, because the reality is there's less tradespeople in your generation. And she's like, the house that you're going to get is one that needs work.
Right.
That's just the reality.
Especially as first-time home buyers in a market where
Yeah.
everyone wants a house. So, I mean, and I think when we looked at the scope of the work, Andrew and I were hopeful, but naive, very naive.
I think I said it 4 months into the reno, which was, if you told me how much work this was going to be, I probably wouldn't have bought it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I went in totally blind, being like, I'm just going to shut up, put blinders on. I'm going to have analysis paralysis if I look at this anymore, and I'm just going to do this.
I think a good thing, if I must say, about Andrew and I's relationship is we're both logical people. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely have a vision in my head of something, and I tend to just want to do it, and I will do it, and I will get it done.
Yeah.
And Andrew sometimes is my person to be like, all right, relax. We got to think it through and have a plan and do this. So I think for this time around, it really helped the two of us to kind of be like, all right, let's configure a plan, but we're going to do it. It's going to be like a big dream kind of thing. Like, let's get this done. But basically it's,
Yeah.
hard to figure out. It's hard to explain how the whole concept of it. But I mean, I think, just to give a quick overview of the expectation of what we came into with the house was, we expected it to be just a quick aesthetic look.
We both thought it was gonna be a month and a half, 2 months of aesthetic look, and it turned into a 5-month reno.
Where we redid the
Where-
electrical, the plumbing.
We stripped electrical, strip plumbing. Yeah.
Brand new bathroom,
We did-
tiled both bathrooms.
Yeah. For scope of work, I would say, yeah.
Both kitchen upstairs
We
was
did-
done completely. New appliances for our unit and the unit upstairs.
Yeah. We basically did 2 homes. Essentially.
Yeah.
That was a very long-winded answer.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
that's what it was.
It's a big scope of work. Yeah, not to keep.
No, I love it, honestly. And I definitely relate with you guys on that one. Like, not to change the subject, but like going into my house, like I definitely had the same sort of thing happen where like I'm like, oh, like there's only really a couple things. It shouldn't be too expensive. And it turned out to be something multiples more expensive than I thought it was gonna be. So it's definitely, one of those things where like I feel like even, as we continue to buy properties, as we continue to, kind of learn what some of these items and services and everything cost, like it's just a lot more awareness, and it's I feel like it's really hard, like right off the bat, to kind of like see exactly what you're getting into, especially in, some of these older homes and everything, where like, all right, I fixed one problem and now there's three more, like son of a gun.
Start peeling the
like,
onion, man.
yeah, and it's definitely one of those things too, where like it totally can be a little discouraging, you know what I mean? I don't know. How was that? I've never really asked something like this before, because I've felt this for myself and it was a little rough, but it was kind of my own fault in a way. But of things taking like, going through the process and kind of having a hard time like seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, and like, not just like the checklist that's like stupid long and everything. And it's like, oh, like how was it for you guys kind of going through that?
All right, so I already, I mumbled like I got this one, because so basically like for my W2, my job, like I'm basically a project manager. So like I know what the light at the end of the tunnel is with those. I have a pretty darn good understanding who are the stakeholders, who are the ball players. Real estate is a lot different in the sense, it's the same concept, but it's different in the sense of I have never seen a project from start to finish. Like I had the arrogance in our rental being like, I'm not going to get a dumpster. That's a waste of $500. I'm going to take all the trash, put it in a bag, put it in the back of a truck and bring it to the dump because I can do that and it's going to be cheaper. Well, it wasn't. So there's things like that. Like that was discouraging to me, things like that. But the end of the tunnel light, I guess, to your point, that happened to me. I was in glory mode in the first project. We demoed a room, like our bedroom behind us. And we basically ripped out the walls, and I was in glory. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to rip all this stuff out. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to get it done next week. And then you realize there's subcontractor schedules. And then you find out, oh, my electrician's 3 weeks booked out. Oh, I need a plumber. I go through, I think we interviewed like 7 plumbers until we could find someone. Then it's a month later. Then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have no idea how long this is going to take. Then I think like it really hit me out 2 months in when I had to pay my first mortgage without a tenant. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this hurts. Like this,
it hurts a lot.
It like stabbed me. I was like, when are we going to be done? And her parents were, Nat's parents were really good. My dad even mentioned it too. My parents are saying it they talked about like the hill of a project. And they were like, her dad looked at me and he goes, I'm like, where are we on the hill? Like he made the remark and he goes, you're not even at the top yet. He's like, not even close. He's like, you're like at the base, like just about to climb the steep part. And I was like, I ripped out a room. And he goes, you ripped out one room. You have 9 more to go. And I was like, okay.
All right.
And I think once he gave that once I had like that view sight from a project manager standpoint, I looked at Nat, I was like, we got to go. I was like, we're going to be paying this mortgage till December without a tenant. We're going to be screwed. This is not good. That was really like my disappointment phase. We closed on 2/22/22. And I think like the midway of April, I was like, oh crap. I was like, we need to boogie. Like we need to move.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel you there. It's so like I actually just got one of my units that was giving me a hard time for most of the year last year, finally rented rather, leased up. And I was paying 2/3 of the mortgage myself, which was equivalent to one of my biweekly checks, like basically the whole thing. So I totally feel you guys there. And it's like, oh crap, like this thing literally like needs to get done yesterday, or we're going to have more questions to figure out, more challenges to overcome.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
It's really interesting though. And I mean, even like in different aspects of, for us, it was a buy and hold, or, an owner occupied for a little bit, like whatever the situation was. But like, I could just imagine, kind of going through something like that. If you're trying to do a flip or something and the financing's 10-11% or something, a couple points, like I'd be like, wouldn't be able to sleep. Like, all right, like you guys, like, come on, and
Yeah.
the holding
that's
costs
definitely
are
the hard part.
Yeah. And
I mean, you do get
Sorry, I'm sorry. Please
No,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, you do get to a point where Andrew and I were waking up every single day, like in I don't know, I'd say like March, April, and May. We were there every single day, every day,
Yeah, like
for as long as we possibly could. Just like I think we blacked out for 3 months.
and this is the luck of working remotely. Like I didn't have to go on site at this time. So like for
Same.
me, a lot of my work, I would like, stay a little bit later, just crush it. What crush it have to do with like work wise. And we'd look at the calendar and be like, okay, like I don't have meetings for 4 hours. All
Right.
my work's done. Like, let's go, let's get this done. And, let's go paint that room. We'll get half of it done, but hell, it's, and the thing is, it was a 45-minute drive from where we were staying. So it just worked out. It was always a 2-hour or an extra 2-hour deal. Cause you're like, oh, I'm so tired. And we make the remark from 2/22/22 to about June we moved in. I blacked out. I don't remember anything. I just remember working in this house. That's all I remember from soup to nuts.
Yeah.
That's it.
It was like I sold the deal and then I painted a room. And then I was like, okay, I got to go back to my computer, sell another deal. Okay, all right, now I got to go do the trim work. Like it's just you make it work. You just have to make it work because you just do not want to pay the additional full mortgage. That was just a big motivator at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like an accountability partner in a way, right? Because you kind of have
100%.
to get it done or bad things will happen.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal though, and I feel like that is definitely a big lesson, to kind of share is like or pretty much like a conversation that isn't really had too often is just like how much of an impact the holding costs can have, like especially if you're like going to be a house hacker, if you want to do the work yourself. It's something to consider, and something that I learned the hard way myself was, so I wanted to do a lot of the work myself, definitely, relate to you guys on that one. And the thing that I realized like a couple months in is that like, that's great that you want to do the work yourself. And like, if you have the time, fantastic. But the thing that I didn't realize was the learning curve of doing some of the stuff that you've never done before. And like messing it up and having to run back to Home Depot 3 times. And like, it taken way longer than the guy in the 4-minute YouTube video. And like, it's just something to keep in mind, the guy can do it in 4 minutes, but it might take you 3 hours and 2 Home Depot trips later.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
We made the remark with the Home Depot trips too. I think her dad and I we did a bunch of jobs together. Like my dad and I did stuff and we'd leave at like, let's say 7 a.m. and I'd blink, we'd be back, but it'd be 9:30. I'm like, what the hell? Like what? And they're like, dude, you got to find the wood. You got to get like, there's a reason guys, there's a reason contractors, some guys, this is their job. They just prep the job. And like, that's why it's a thing. That's why people do that.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense though.
Right.
So let me ask you guys, what's kind of your drive and your vision for the long term?
You want to go or should I?
No, you go ahead.
I'd say, so I'm a big person on this mindset. I think we'll talk about books at some point. I read a lot of like self-help books, I guess, at this, and one common theme that I get from all of them, whether it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it could be, the any of Brandon Turner's books.
Yep.
Wealth and finance give you time and freedom and choice. And that's my motivator. I want the choice to say, it's really nice out. I want to go fly fishing right now. Or, hey, Nat and I, we could go on a minor trip together. Or let's say I have kids and I'm like, I want to go to their practice right now. I don't want to be restricted or held back by anybody or anything. I want to make sure that it's my choice, my time. I think there's some sacrifice, obviously, and things that to commit to, but if I have the flexibility and the time of choice, that is a major life win to me.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's almost, well, it is, kind of using the concept of real estate and cash flow and equity and the income and everything to essentially buy the life that you deserve and the life that you want and everything. And it really is a beautiful thing, and not to be kind of held down by like the W-2 or, whatever it is and everything. And it's really interesting, and I definitely kind of look forward to the future where like more people kind of start hearing about like this type of mindset and that there's actually another option out there on the table if you want it. And this is the kind of impact that it can have, and because life's too short and there are kind of a lot of unhappy people out there, and it can be an absolute game changer, and
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
So that actually is a nice transition to the how do you define wealth one. We just answered two of them. Perfect.
Yeah, no, right.
Well, we laughed about it because you know, like we said, we did look at the questions in the car because we wanted to make sure. And we both looked at each other when we said this, and we said time. Yeah, easily. Well,
Yeah.
that was, I swear we didn't sync that. We didn't like it. No, we both said time. I mean, like Andrew said before, just to touch on it again, it's, you know, we were fortunate enough in the beginning of our youth where we were able to travel internationally together for a few years. We want to be able to do that without the financial burden of, you know, a regular life. So I mean, time is everything. Time is wealth.
Totally.
Yeah, it's the corniest thing ever, but the most precious commodity any of us have is time.
100%.
And I think, and I know Gordon definitely in the initial group, he cracks me up, but like some people are like, oh, I want to buy 5 units in 3 years. He's like, the hell's wrong with you? Do it in a year. Do it in 6 months.
Yeah, dude.
And like, it's a funny, but it's true. That's what he says. And he goes, he's like, his question is always, why do you want to wait longer, 5 years? And I think that's a true reality. It's like, you know, Nat and I, to kind of talk about defining wealth, which is time, you know, we have some different goals for ourselves. Like, you know, we're going to get married next year. And we made that choice based on a wealth decision for time for ourselves of like, hey, we'd like to get 2 units before we get married. And that was a big thing. And I think that goes into the wealth aspect of some people would be like, oh, why didn't you just, you know, what's that like, there's like an investment bureau where it's like you buy your first multi and it takes you 5 years to save up to buy your second. And then when you have your second, then it takes 3 years to buy your third. And then it takes, you know, is there a way to cut that time down? Is that possible? And there's definitely ways to do it. I think we're doing it one way by house hacking. That's saving time in other areas of our life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And shout out to Gordon. Love you, man. That's definitely true. That is definitely one of the many things that I love about Mr. Gordon, you know, is don't wait. Like life's literally way too short. Like get to the point and let's do it. Let's kick ass, you know? And yeah,
absolutely.
So let me see here. So what's something that you kind of thought about, you know, like business or investing or like creating wealth originally that has changed as you've gone along?
You want me to go or you?
You go ahead.
On me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say I had a really interesting upbringing in terms of investments and financing. My parents are wonderful. They're great. They're blue collar workers through and through. My mom's a professor, so I wouldn't say she's blue collar. My dad's definitely a tradesman. Their financial advice for me, which I totally get to this day, which is cash is king, save your cash. And as I got older and I read more books and I kind of broadened my mind a little bit, I learned that it's really good to have cash. It's better to put your cash to work. And that was something that I had to learn. That was not innate. That was definitely, it doesn't make sense to hold on to the, you know, to the cash pool, put it to work. And so, you know, like for myself, you know, I have a classic 401k. I also, my other retirement aspect is I have a Roth IRA. I always make sure I max that out every year. And then I also make sure that I put a few bit of money away for the S&P every year, but that was never like actively working for me that I could physically see it all the time. I would say that the financial aspect of that was also real estate. I didn't understand that my cash into real estate was coming back to me because I was always thinking single family. And I never was like, I'm going to live in there. That's paying my future self in equity. Sure. But it's not giving me cash. It wasn't until we got the multifamily. We have a wonderful tenant and, you know, getting that cash flow every month. And I was like, oh, this is coming back now. Like this is a 30-day thing. This isn't I'll check my stocks in 4 years and be like, oh, this went up 10%. Amazing. This is an immediate return on investment that I'm getting. And I'm going, okay, this is the game now.
Yep. It's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. No, and I think just to even touch on that again too is, I mean, for me, it feels like the entire outlook has changed completely. Andrew's definitely the better saver, definitely the spender of the relationship. But if we're just completely honest, but I think for me, it completely changed. I mean, I'm in sales, like I said, so getting that quick hit of money is just kind of, I enjoy awesome. It. It's like what I thoroughly enjoy in life. Love it. But I think just investing in yourself, this probably sounds pathetic, but my first investment, honest to goodness, it is. Like, I did not know, I don't dabble in stocks. I have no understanding of that. It's just the truth. It's just truth. But what I do know is real estate, luckily enough for me. But, being this my very first investment, it's addicting. Like I want to continue to do more. I want that quick hit of money every month where I don't have to stress about it. And I know it's coming and I know that I can enjoy the lifestyle that I want.
Yeah. No, I love that. Something that I do want to touch on is I think it's extremely interesting, like the dynamic that, most of us are kind of brought up on of like, oh, like save your money, save your money, save your money. And like, just keep it in a bank account, don't touch it, whatever. And then it's almost like you kind of, after reading like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad or something like that, or, kind of breaking into like the investing or entrepreneurship kind of space, like that advice almost is actually bad. Like once you start to kind of see like the next part of that. And it's like, oh, like that's great that you have like money saved up and you're liquid, like fantastic, awesome. But once you start to factor in like inflation and like, the bank account, like not adding interest, it's like, oh, like now I'm actually in a bad position. You're in a good position from where you started, but not exactly the most efficient position on level 2 of the game, So it's like, I always found that really interesting, from like kind of that original advice that most of us get growing up of just save. And then once you kind of break into step 2, it's like, actually, you don't really want to do that. You do, but you don't, and kind of striking the balance there and putting it to work.
Yeah, and I think to kind of echo that, there's definitely people out there like I think for the cash aspect too. I always try to not always I make her laugh. I'm like, you got to have an emergency fund. I don't care if it's $5,000. I don't care if it's $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. You got to have something because if the boiler breaks, you got to have money. Like you need, and if it's the middle of winter, you got to just shell out and whatever. So I think that's like kind of common. I think that I definitely know people who like, if I've always seen like the thing with Logan Paul, someone's like, how much money you have in the bank? And he's like, oh, I have $5 million. And I'm like, what? I'm like, he has what in the bank? Like, that's crazy. Like, why not put that to work? But everybody has their different threshold. So that whole mindset, like you're saying, it's definitely, that's something that it's something you're taught young, I think, by many of us, but I think it takes taking in new information and understanding and really like salivating over being like, what does that actually mean to understand it?
Yeah, it's really crazy, kind of the more that you think about it, it's nuts.
Yep.
So out of your guys' experience so far, what's kind of your best piece of advice to, new investors that want to break into the game, like, get the first house hack, go through the experience? What do you think?
You want to go?
No, you go ahead.
Why me?
I thought you were gonna say
The dumpster?
Yeah.
Always get the dumpster.
No, it's a joke we've had, but it's like the truest joke ever.
It is a joke. It is. We're like, just always get the dumpster. I don't care if you think it's one room, always get the dumpster. But best piece of advice to break in. I think my one singular thing is really just to not be scared of it. Which I know it seems very basic, but I think that there are more resources out there now that, our parents had, or before that, we are able to reach out and network and talk with people who would like to give back and want to give back. And I think using those resources now in our day and age is more valuable than anything else. So, I mean, even if you've never even, again, Andrew and I are lucky with our background and our parents' background, but I genuinely think if you reach out to the right people, you can do the exact same thing.
Totally.
I'd say my biggest piece of advice, I think everybody's situation is different. I think if you're a first-time home buyer, I think the best piece of advice I can give you, because you're going to learn a lot about everything, is to house hack. And I think if you're going to house hack, it's so easy to overanalyze a property. That was something that I tried doing, and it was like I was crunching the numbers. I'm like, okay, every unit should be between $100,000 and $200,000 because that's just what it should be, and that's just the way it is. But every analysis gets thrown out of the window, because if you live in it and you're just not paying your full mortgage, then that's just a win. There's literally no way around it. And I would say that's a pretty big one that I personally like enjoyed. And I'd say, and that's the one I learned. I'd say the second biggest piece I would give is get the right, your network is your net worth. I think that's a big true factor. And I think in part of that network and tapping into that network, you have no idea what to not know. There's literally no way you can know perfectly everything that's going to go on. And I told Nat all the time, what we always mention, like the biggest lessons learned. And everybody tried telling us what the reno. They're like, the reno's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. We had no freaking clue what the reno was gonna be until we peeled the onions layer. Until I took a crowbar and pulled the wall back, and I went, "Oh shit!" Like,
Yeah.
and I think that part of that net worth mindset is I didn't have the confidence in doing that until like her father or my father or her mother or Nat was like, just rip the wall out. We're gonna do this whole room anyway. Who cares? And I think that part of that advice comes from a place of you don't know what to not know until you're in it. And I think then you have to really be reflective and look back and say, okay, I learned a lot. So for new investors, mine is definitely, and embrace the change that you don't know what to not know, and to kind of just really jump into it and go and attack and tackle it. And just look, if you can house hack, do it. And if you can't house hack, find something that works for you that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I love that so much, and it definitely is easy to kind of like, have your nerves start to, and anxiety like really starts to kind of, play its part, especially when you're first looking for a place. And like, you want everything to be like exact and like all the metrics get met and like everything be fantastic and right on the money. And that's, I feel like, a lesson in itself, because that's exactly how I was myself when I was looking. I'm like, oh, like I need to know everything about everything before I jump in. And I couldn't have been more wrong in my entire life. It's just, it's one of those things, like you can only learn so much, and you can only do so much due diligence until you actually like dip both feet in and just wing it, know? And like that's a big part of it. Like things are going to happen. Like you're going to uncover stuff that you weren't prepared for at all. You're going to learn the lesson and it's going to be all right. It's part of the game. And, like we were talking about earlier, like the next time around, and properties down the line, you're going to be able to leverage that experience and all the lessons from all the others to be able to come in with, maybe a sharper eye each time that you do it, or, mixing that with, going to, all of the resources like you were just talking about, like Biggerpockets and Facebook, especially, Instagram, like meetups, like it is like flabbergasting how many resources that we have in this day and age
Definitely.
But that's the squirrel mindset. Yeah. There's just so many distractions. You have to really just pick one and just grab and go with it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's ludicrous, and I mean, even like, if you have a question about like, I don't know, like what kind of paint should I do for a kitchen? Like there's like 5 types of paint. Like, I don't know. Like I just want
Sherwin-Williams forever. Painted every room in this house. Okay. Sherwin-Williams, please sponsor me for that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and like who do you ask when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you see like satin, semi-gloss, gloss? Like I don't know. I just want a green. Like I don't know. Definitely been there, but
do you want? There's like 40 shades of green, dude. You want forest green? You want money green? Like, come on.
Exactly, but yeah, and like the more that you network, the more that you're just constantly absorbing and just constantly being in that space. Like it's almost kind of like the more insured you're getting against like the challenges when things come up. Cause like, yeah, like if a pipe bursts or something, yeah, like that's horrible and expensive. But if you happen to know a plumber in the area, like that's a phone call away ASAP,
right,
and like,
right.
Exactly, and yeah, it's definitely a beautiful thing, like just keep on networking, keep on going to events, keep on reading books, podcasts, and the resources that we have now. Like I couldn't even imagine trying to do this like 20 years ago.
Right. No.
Like,
be in the public library, dude, and just hoping to meet somebody that is also like-minded.
Yeah. Paying a lot of money towards a plumber, more so.
Yeah, definitely huge credit to all the investors that have been in the game for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Yep. So my last question for you guys, actually you kind of answered it already, but I'm going to dig in with another part. So the question originally was, do you read? But the question I have now is, what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone? Multiple is okay.
if it was just anybody, like if I had to give anybody a book, like whether they're fresh off fresh out of high school or college or whatever, or just somebody that's been around for 10, 20 years, but just thinking about it, it would just be Rich Dad Poor Dad. I feel like that's such like the easier win of like any book to give someone and be like, this is super easy to read. if this resonates with you, there's so many avenues you can go with. Here's the book.
Yep. I agree. I 100% agree. Natalie, you got one?
I have to be 100% right. And I actually, Andrew and I were talking about this one too. I don't necessarily read too much into business investing or real estate books. I'm going to be honest, because I tend to just go straight to my source, which again, I'm lucky to have. I either go to my grandfather who's built houses all throughout Connecticut his entire life, or my father who's a contractor, or my mother who's currently in the real estate business and successful. It's less of me reading or more of me going straight to the source detail, really.
Yeah. No,
if I'm honest.
That's awesome. It's perfect, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Andrew. It's that book is, I paid like $8 for it on Amazon, and it's literally probably going to be one of the most highest returning investments I'll ever make. Like, that book changed my life. Like, that's like infinite ROI times 10, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I think that, like, you know, like he does a good job giving like a good story about it, but I just think like he just gives a very simple scenario of like, listen, like wealth is it's really not that complicated. Here's my 4-box grid. The money you get from whatever it is, there's other way you can take that, put it something else that also gives you money in. And if you want to lose your money, just buy all this other stuff that's just going to be obsolete in 3 years and be done with it. And it's really simple, but really profound. And you're just kind of like, okay, like, I think that's the hard part, is that I think the one thing with that book that he doesn't tell you is like, you know, what should you do? And because I think a lot of people are looking for answers most of the time. And the problem is there's no true answer. Everybody has their own route. I know some guys that are my age that are 10 times as wealthy as I am because they option trade. And then they tell me there's a lot of risk with it. They're like, oh, I'm basically gambling. Like, that's what I am doing. And there's some guys that just, they like, you know, like yourself, Kyle, or, you know, or Jason, or anybody else, they just go through real estate. I think you have to don't be a squirrel and try 1,000 things. Pick one thing, try it for like 6 months. If it doesn't work, go to the next thing. Just keep trying something until you feel like this is where I'm meant to stick. And that's really what that book tells you, is put your money towards a thing that's going to give back to you.
Totally, man. No, I totally agree. And that's almost the challenging thing too, is there's so many options that it's overwhelming, and it can get overwhelming very easily.
Yep.
You know, I mean, to your point, like even just in each of these asset classes alone, like real estate, there's a million bajillion things you can do. And there are a million bajillion people doing those things and making, you know, potentially making a solid amount for their efforts, you know, and like it all works, you know, it's
for you.
You know, I heard somebody say a phrase this weekend. It was what was it? Like you can only it's I'm trying to remember. It was something about like if you're trying to like catch a chicken or something, or like trying to catch 2 chickens at the same time, like you get none of them, like something like that. Yeah. Basically
No, go ahead. You're good.
That's okay. No, I'm totally butchering it right now, and it's hilarious. So I sound like a lunatic, but basically, like if there's like a bunch of like chickens running around a room, and like somebody tells you to pick up like 2 of them, like you'll end up getting none because like neither of it's gonna happen because you're not fast enough.
I get that. As a former farm boy, I totally get that, dude. So
it is difficult to pick up 2 chickens at once. It is very
difficult to pick up 2 chickens at once.
So it can be done.
It can be. It's just really hard.
Right.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, like circling that back, you know, like basically if you try and catch too many things at the same time, if you're interested in too many things at the same time, you're probably not going to make like deep enough significant progress in any of them, and just kind of spread yourself out way too thin. And it's that was a really heavy lesson for me this year. Definitely. And it's hard because, you know, like there's people doing short-term rentals and wholesaling and buy and hold and this, that, the other. And, you know, everything sounds so glamorous and cool. And it is. Now just might not be the right time for you for it.
Right.
Yep. No, I totally 100% agree with you. And that's definitely something like I think Nat can attest with me. I like to try everything. That's just, I literally will just say yes to everything. And then I'll decide if it's worthy of a no. That's the way I look at it. Like, feel like, nope, it's literally not worth it, or it is. And that's to a fault, I think, sometimes for myself. I think sometimes I take on too much, but then once I have the realization, I'm like, okay, I learned a lot from that, but like, am I adding value to myself right now? And I'm okay. It's gotten me this far, so I'm going to probably keep doing it, but is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's tough because like you want to stay open-minded and like you don't want to close yourself off. But if you're too open-minded, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice. Like it's kind of like that balance. I definitely hear
having the
that.
maturity to figure that out.
Yeah. Yep. But guys, thank you so much for coming on
Man.
here.
This was
that
great.
Was absolutely incredible. Where on
Thank
like
you.
social media can you guys be found?
Oh.
You know what's horrible is I don't even know my own handle. Honestly, if you're in RA Ignition, just
No, I think I'm at
You're-
NJB11.
no, you're
No.
You're NJ Barnett 11 Instagram, I think.
No, I'm NJBX11, like my AIM name from the 2000s.
and for myself, if you just find like just Andrew Bosco, like whether it's Facebook or Instagram, doesn't really matter. But I'll be in the group. I'm always open to talk to people and meet people. Honestly, like a weird one that I would suggest is LinkedIn. Just look up my name, Andrew Bosco, on LinkedIn. That's a pretty common one for me to recommend people. Yeah. And I have no problem. I've honestly accepted more people that I don't know. They're just like, can I just talk about real estate or investing? Because I've heard of you in this other group. Like, yeah, go ahead. I don't care. Like, let's just chat.
Yeah. Yep. That's how you and I had an hour-long conversation a couple weeks ago.
I think we were both in the car, and I was like, let's let it rip, dude.
That's what I love about real estate. You know, it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll drop that stuff below, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that
of course,
was absolutely awesome.
Thank you. It was really fun. We appreciate it.
Hopefully we can see you at a meetup coming up. That's one of our goals, is to go to a meetup at some point, whether it's local or not. So it'd be good.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.